Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are here with Mr. Christian Drapeau from Stemmergen. Is that correct?
Correct.
We're here to talk about stem cells today. We are at the Biohacking Congress here in Austin, Texas, where we're listening to over 30 great speakers, doctors, scientists. Everyone that knows anything about biohacking is here and teaching us, and we're trying to learn how to become the best version of ourselves. Be sure to check out biohackingcongress.com to get tickets to the next event in Miami, which is going to be awesome on the weekend of October 20th. Without further ado, Christian, I wanted to get into stem cells. It's a hot topic right now. Tell me a little bit about the differences of traditional stem cell therapy and what your company is trying to promote.
I mean, somewhere it is the same thing. We just use a different modality to bring the stem cells in the picture. So the difference is that when you get a stem cell injection, basically, I mean, I'm simplifying here, but in a general picture, you increase the number of stem cells through an injection. The stem cells can come from various sources, fat tissue, blood, bone marrow being sort of the main reservoir of stem cells. So you take stem cells from the bone marrow, you put them back in the bloodstream, so you increase the number of stem cells in circulation through an injection. What we do is understanding that you already release stem cells naturally. It's part of your physiological function. Your body, you release stem cells every day. If you did not, you would not be alive today. So we leverage or hack, if you want, this natural process in the body, and we use plant extract that basically support that natural release of stem cells. So we have a blend of these Stemmergen, a blend of these plants that we have documented act as stem cell mobilizers. And then you just take 2 capsules and you will trigger the release of 5 to 10 million of your own stem cells. So it's the same outcome, increasing the number of stem cells in circulation. We simply use a different modality, which is by supporting the natural release of stem cells from the bone marrow.
So, talking about the natural release of stem cells from the bone marrow, is there a limitation on how much can be released into the bloodstream? And is there a limited supply of stem cells?
There's not a limited supply of stem cells. How many you can release, honestly, it's not something that has been studied in terms of the limit.
Okay.
The compounds that your body will naturally release when you have an injury, for example, you have a heart attack, a broken bone, a cut, a burn to your skin, your own body will increase the number of stem cells in circulation by 3 to 10-fold in order to support the process of tissue repair. So let's say that you can at least physiologically release that number of stem cells. What we do with a product like Stemmergen is it's benign compared to that kind of release. It's only that you allow it every day. So it's the cumulative benefit of that. Now, if we talk about, if I take your question and kind of turn it into, is there a limitation in triggering the release of stem cells from the bone marrow? Your stem cells in your bone marrow have telomerase. So they are meant, it's their function to multiply and maintain themselves during the entire life of an individual. It's not a medical condition known to have somebody suddenly run out of stem cells. Granted, the decline in the number of stem cells is a part of aging, and I'm sure we can talk about this. But in your bone marrow per se, the only thing that is happening is that the amount of red marrow that makes stem cells decline as you age. It's a process called conversion. It's a very well-known normal process of our physiology. Red marrow turns into fatty marrow that does not make stem cells. So as the red marrow shrinks, you end up with fewer stem cells in circulation. But the red marrow that you have continues to produce stem cells. No matter how many stem cells you pull out of the bone marrow, that stays a constant during the entire life of an individual.
I see. So physiologically, as a cause from not having as much stem cells, ability to produce as much stem cells from the red bone marrow, are we seeing that with aging, people are not able to heal as quickly and feel better, recover as quickly? So
Absolutely.
That's the main function of stem cells, right?
I mean, when we talk about stem cells, we often talk about repair, because that's what stem cells are doing.
Right.
They're the repair system. You go and you get a stem cell injection, it's because you have a problem to solve. But to me, there's a greater role of stem cells in the background that is not really talked about. And it's the fact that every day of our life we lose cells, and it's stem cells that are going to replace these cells. Stem cell research has revealed a phenomenon in the body that is fascinating, is that aging is just not a slow decline. Aging is essentially understanding that every single tissue and organs in your body is constantly in a process of turnover. You lose cells every day, you need stem cells to replace the cells that are being lost. As long as you have enough stem cells to offset cellular loss, then you're fine. But with age, with the shrinking of the red marrow, you have a sharp decline in the number of stem cells in circulation. From the day you're born until about age 30, you have lost about 90% of your circulating stem cells.
Wow.
So there's a point in your 30s when you learn that you're no longer Superman or Wonder Woman. You're not repairing as well. It's because you have lost that ability to really support this natural process of turnover in the body, and that is when you start to slowly accumulate unrepaired daily damages, microscopic damages that you will never experience on a daily basis, but they're starting to happen. And then over time, it is the daily accumulation of these unrepaired damages that culminates into any kind of age-related problems.
Right. And when we're talking about the therapy of your method versus the localized stem cell injections, that's exactly what the difference is in a way. Is like it has to be localized and injected into a certain part of your body that needs that repair. But your way of looking at it is the natural body's healing process to release those stem cells, stimulate that release in the bloodstream, and then they just automatically gravitate towards the parts of your body that need that repair.
Now many clinics that do stem cell injection actually do inject in systemic circulation.
Oh, okay.
You can do it in the tissue. Is not something, I mean, you can do it, but most of the time what they will do is that they will try to reach the artery or an arteriole that is irrigating that tissue, so that you make sure that most of your stem cells enter into that tissue.
Okay, gotcha.
But people are doing this less and less because the understanding is that you put them in the bloodstream and they will find their way to the organ that is in need of repair, because it's the natural function of your body.
Right.
When you have an injury, that area is signaling locally. And locally in the blood vasculature, in the fine capillaries, when a stem cell circulates in that capillaries, it sees the release of these growth factors, these molecules, or chemotactic factors that attract cells. And as soon as stem cell sees these compounds, the stem cell will leave the blood circulation, get into that tissue, and do tissue repair. So you just put these stem cells in the blood circulation through an injection or by releasing your own, and they will do the same thing. They will find tissues in need of repair, and that's where they will go.
And by releasing their own through your product Stemrogen, so they essentially gravitate towards it and everything in a less invasive way too. You don't have to like inject anything. It's just you take a pill, right? Can you talk a little bit about the product of how that would work and the mechanism of action of what compounds act on the red bone marrow to release the stem cells?
Yeah, it is the difference is that we just release them ourselves. When we talk about being invasive, yeah, of course, an injection is more invasive, but just to be clear, stem cell injections are very safe.
Okay,
and it's very rare that you get something negative coming out of a stem cell injection. But yeah, so what we have essentially, I can talk about the mechanism of action. I think it's interesting to talk a little bit about the story of how we discovered this, because we did not, my background is neurophysiology. I did not decide one day that the field of stem cell research was a cool field and novel, emerging field, so let's take advantage of it. It really started, or it happened through the traditional scientific approach. I was hired in 1995 to study the mechanism of action behind a blue-green algae called AFA, blue-green algae from Klamath Lake. At the time, it was a hot product on the marketplace. DSHEA had just been passed, the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act in America, and companies needed to have data to be able to support the claims that they would make. So that's when I was hired to do this study. So I'm studying this plant, or blue-green algae. The main benefits are on inflammation, on immunity, and mental clarity, a sense of mental energy, a sense of well-being. So we quickly identified the active compound in that blue-green algae supporting these benefits. But as I'm doing that research, I come across people who reversed or had significant improvement in conditions for which oftentimes medicine cannot do much, and problems touching the nervous system, the brain, the heart, the lung, the liver, the pancreas, the joints, to a point where you're looking at all of this, and one is okay. Actually, many of them for many years I was kind of just, I did not I wouldn't say I didn't believe them, because the people telling me their story were very genuine. But from a scientific standpoint, they're just stories. But after 50, 100 of those, and then I started to dig a little bit more, I realized some of these cases, actually probably all of them, were very real. So how could one plant achieve benefits and repair of the heart, of the lung, of the brain, of the kidney, of the pancreas?
The whole system.
The whole system. So we had no real understanding of how it was working. So we did a number of studies and find good data, but nothing that ever explained it, until one day a friend of mine sent me an article, and the title was "Turning Blood into Brain." It's the first observation of a stem cell going into the brain and becoming a brain cell. Go back to 2001. At that time, stem cells are only precursors to blood cells. This idea that they can become other things is like fallacy. People are laughing at us when we're proposing that this could be a reality in the body. But it was. I went back into the scientific literature, dug in the scientific literature, found other papers talking about how stem cells could become liver cells, heart cells. So now you're looking at this data. Stem cells can become brain, liver, and heart. How could they become those three tissues and not the rest? It's nonsense. The body cannot have a mechanism like this. So it's just a matter of time. So on the basis of what was present in the scientific literature, I published an article in Journal Medical Hypotheses suggesting that stem cells are the repair system of the body. And in the back of my mind, what if that plant, you have plant like echinacea supporting the immune system. What if now we had a plant that supported this natural system, which is your system of repair? It's not immune cells, it's stem cells. So we went in the lab, we bought the equipment, we started to count stem cells, and we discovered that that's how it works. It triggers the release of stem cells from the bone marrow. So now, talking about mechanism of action, it's the first time that we talk about that this concept is talked about. It's the first time that a plant has been documented to do that. So the big question, so nobody believes it. So the typical answers from every single scientist at the time was stem cells cannot become cells of the brain or the heart or other tissue. And even if they do, putting more stem cells in circulation means absolutely nothing. So we had to show the mechanism of action, the active compound, and to show that using this product to increase the number of stem cells in circulation, we can actually repair tissues.
Right.
So I'll make this short, but we discovered that AFA contains an L-selectin blocker, which will trigger the release of a marginal population of stem cells. That's why the response is relatively small compared to drugs that are triggering stem cell release from the bone marrow. And as we did an animal model of muscle injury, so we injected cardiotoxins, which destroyed the muscle. So basically the leg is paralyzed, there's no mobility. We have a control group, a group with AFA extract, and the group with AFA extract had much more significant repair of that muscle. And it's beautiful because we used at the time it was a popular model, we eliminate stem cells in the animal and inject stem cells with green fluorescent protein. So now if these stem cells go into the muscle and become muscle cells, we can see where in the muscle that repair took place based on stem cells, because that area, you just shed light and it glows green. And what we discovered is that the entire muscle is green. So the entire muscle has been reformed, been rebuilt, but it's all based on stem cells.
Wow.
So it basically revealed two things. Number one, they are indeed your repair system. And number two, if you put more in circulation, indeed, you give your body the ability to repair more efficiently.
Wow, what a story. And talking a little bit about the physical, blessings that stem cells can bring us and everything. What about on the more mental aspect of like neurological conditions and stuff that we maybe don't see the physiological effects of right away? I'm sure studies are still ongoing, but have there been any trials with dementia or anything that's more like inside a person's head?
Nothing has been done as far as I know right now on dementia. These are parameters that from a study standpoint are more fluid. They're more difficult to assess, but numbers on it do statistics.
Of course.
We are in a stage right now in our development, scientific development, where we're aiming for conditions where you can more accurately quantify, so that when we publish this in the scientific literature, it's easier to demonstrate what is the benefits of you having more stem cells.
Right.
Now, historically, have we heard of benefits? Yes. We have had many many cases over the years. More specifically with something like Parkinson, for example. So we're starting a study right now in Madrid with a scientific team with which we have developed a good relationships over the years. And basically we're taking Parkinson patients because we have seen a lot of these conditions in the past, and we basically put them on Stemrigen and start to follow them over 3 to 6 months. We have another study that we're doing there with congestive heart failure. So we're taking individuals with more than 3 years of stable congestive heart failure, basically showing that whatever is their condition right now is the best of what medicine can do today. Mm-hmm. And all we do is that we trigger 3 times a day mobilization of their own stem cells. And we're continuing this study. It was stopped because of COVID, but we had a chance to do the first cohort in that study. And at this point, in all of them, we see pretty much a normalization of their condition, which is after 6 months, we get a 19% improvement in ejection fraction, the amount of blood that is pumped, by the heart, which is, extremely significant. Essentially, they're normal.
Yeah.
They are, and it also gives us documentation on something that is growing, if you want, as a perception, because it's false, as a perception on YouTube and a lot of social media, this idea that past 40 years old, your stem cells are worthless. You have to get like umbilical cord stem cells. And you can, I'm not saying anything negative about it, but this idea that past 40 years old, your stem cells are worthless and you have to rely on external stem cells. Well, these individuals, they're all above 60, many of them above 65, and we all see the same benefits in all these individuals. Yes, your stem cells are not as effective when you are older, but they are definitely effective enough to generate significant repair. It will be a little bit like saying, you're still fairly young, but
well, thank you.
But take somebody at 60 years old and ask this person, are you as effective, performance-wise as when you were 20? The answer is obviously no.
Not, yeah.
Does that mean that you're worthless? Of course not.
Wisdom's a great thing.
Exactly.
Right?
So your stem cells are the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're not as effective as when you were a newborn, but they're plenty effective enough to do significant repair in your body until the end of your life.
Well, that's great. That's good to know. Let's dispel that myth right there. So also going into the stem cells of how your company works and how it releases the stem cells, you said 3 times a day, I think. Are there, and this is just a curiosity question, are there natural ways that you guys have seen from people that you've gathered data from over the years, that habits they've done or routines that they've kept that have kept their stem cells more in circulation or had higher amount of stem cells later in life? And then you kind of took that data and maybe combined it a little bit with what the plants use as the mechanism of action for stimulating the stem cell release?
We have not done that kind of studies specifically because these are studies that require significant number of individuals. Studying lifestyle and their impact on stem cells is not a simple task.
Of course, yeah.
And the cost of this for a dietary supplement company. So we have not done that. However, there are studies that exist that can give us already some really good answers, to that question. For example, significant or strenuous exercise. You go work out and you just really get into it, and you create a lot of microlesions. And I believe that the mechanism of action is that you create microlesions, so they call for repair, and that call for repair triggers the release of stem cells from the bone marrow. So running a marathon, going and row for an hour, do something that is really demanding, not a walk in the park.
Yeah.
And then you will significantly increase the number of stem cells in circulation. So that's one way to put more stem cells in circulation.
Okay.
But you also have significant damage to repair. So a lot of your stem cells are used for damage. So there's still an advantage of putting more stem cells, simply in other means like Stemrigen, for example.
Right.
So exercise is one. That's the only one. Fasting. You fast more than 3 days, and it was documented that it triggers an increase in the number of stem cells in circulation.
Fast more than 3 days?
More than 3 days is what has been documented. Okay. Would intermittent fasting, let's say 16, 18 hours, do it? I'm not aware that it has been done, and I have not seen any documentation.
Okay.
It's probably not a significant stress enough to trigger repair in that way.
Right.
But at least fasting over 3 days then will increase the number of stem cells in circulation. And we know that good sleep will support the migration of stem cells in the brain and the proliferation of brain stem cells. So during deep sleep, we know that stress hormones, cortisol essentially, will suppress the ability of stem cells to migrate into tissues and proliferate into tissues.
Wow.
So this was done, for example, you take a mouse, and then you take the mouse and you put it in water. You take a blood sample, and then you analyze the ability of stem cells to proliferate and to migrate. Then you take the mouse, put it in a pool, and they don't like water. It's extremely stressful. You take out the mouse, take a blood sample, and study their ability to migrate and proliferate, and you immediately see a reduction in their ability to migrate. If you remove the adrenal glands, you don't have that effect. So it's literally it's really caused by the release of stress hormones in the body.
Right.
And I'm saying this because it's significant. I mean, as human beings, we live in a world where, when is it that we have a day where we're not exposed to some form of stress?
Right.
So I would say the life of an adult for 20, 30, 40 years is associated with everyday release of compounds that suppress your ability to repair. And we know that anxiety has been associated with a whole slew of health problems. So one of the cause is not the only one, but one of the causes is that you basically suppress during all your life your ability to repair. Cigarette smoking also does the same thing. Not only the smoker, but if you filter the air and you take that filter paper, dissolve it into water, and grow stem cells in that water, it will suppress the ability of stem cells to migrate into tissue and proliferate. So cigarette smoking is another one. Alcohol is more recently documented to do the same thing. And I find all of this fascinating because if we accept something that is a reality, your stem cells are your core ability to repair. When you think about it, we know that the body has an innate ability to heal and repair. We've all had broken bones, cuts, bruises as kids, and it repairs, but we never talk about it. You go and you break a bone, the doctor puts you in a cast, tells you come back in 6 weeks. He doesn't say, during that time, make sure you do A, B, and C to repair, to assist that repair process. We don't talk about it. It's absent from our medical discussion because we don't know what it is. We cannot talk about something we don't know. Now we discover what it is. It's your stem cells. So that ability to repair is fundamental. So now understanding that this is the core system in your body to keep you healthy. Anything that is known to enhance your overall health or reduce your overall health is likely to have an effect on that ability of the body to repair. So we find that stress, cigarette smoking, alcohol reduces it, while good sleep, reducing stress, exercise supports the role of stem cells. I find it fascinating. To me, it just further supports this concept that it is your core health system.
That is so cool. Yeah, and all of those things are great lifestyle things that we have to keep in mind to definitely keep our body in tip-top shape and help it be able to repair. You actually gave me a thought of what it could be like in a fictional sense, like Wolverine. Take Wolverine, for example. He heals so quickly and everything. It makes me think the stem cells maybe are a cause of that or something. He could be.
That's it. It's the secret of the movie. They did not reveal that. That plot.
You stay after the credits, a bottle of Stemagent comes up. No, but I wanted to talk a little bit about, we've been talking a lot about, how it works and everything, but more about the effects and, the people that have actually experienced this healing. Those can be a lot of powerful testimonies that help people get out of the light of skepticism and everything. Because you can read a document, you can read all of these findings, but when you actually see a person and experience them going through that change, that can be powerful. And I remember you talked to me about it one time, I think the first time we talked, that this woman had a terrible skin condition, or maybe it was she had burns or something on all over her face, and she started eating this plant or something that was with the natives, and it completely healed her. Almost better than her face before the burns.
I mean, I'll tell you the story.
Yeah,
so
please,
I don't know if it
please.
was better than before, but and I just want to be clear with regulations here with dietary supplement. We cannot make claims that a product has done something. So I really want to focus here. The plant is just leverage. it's the stem cells in the body that is doing it. So really what we're talking about here is the natural ability of the body to repair. Now we discover that the body has that, and all we're doing is that we're just leverage that natural ability of the body. But that story came in the early days. So going back to what I was talking about before, I'm studying this plant, blue green algae, AFA, trying to understand how it's working, and I'm getting all these cases, and this lady was one of the cases, because when people tell you stories about, I'm giving a lecture, somebody comes and tells me I had ABC, whatever the disease, the health problems, and right now I feel much better, I no longer need that drug, or he's telling me a story, but I don't have any medical documentation. Of course, why would he tell me that story if it's not true? But it has no validity.
Right.
Of course, over time, it starts to create a body of stories that are starting to be compelling. But to me, the story that you're talking about is the case that just basically now crystallized my motivation to just go to the bottom of the story of that plant. So it's a lady. She was 60 years old when she sent me a letter with a box. There was a photo album in the box, and she describes that when she was 12, she was walking with a kerosene lamp. She tripped and she burned herself on the face, chest, and arm, 3rd degree. So she was heavily burned, and she has been scarred all her life, like burn scars, like significant burn scars, disfigured all her life. She starts to take the blue-green algae extract at the time, and in her letter, she describes how the scars started to get a little bit inflamed, red, and itchy. So people around her are telling her, stop taking this product, you may be allergic. But she said she had that feeling that this was healing itchiness. When you heal, there's an itchiness to the skin.
Yeah.
That's what it felt to her. So she kept taking the product. She took a picture of herself in the mirror every week. And at the end of the year, that's when she sent the photo album. And so she ends the letter by saying, go and look at the photo album. And then you go through the pictures and you see the entire transformation. And at the end, she has no scars left.
Wow.
And I'm looking at this and, how can I, it's not a medical record, but how can you deny that?
Right.
It was undeniable. And to me, it gave credence to all the other stories that I had heard. So now I started to think, okay, let's go to the bottom of what that is. So we are in the 1990s. Essential fatty acids, omega-3 fatty acid is kind of growing now in the marketplace. Omega-3 has been associated with cardiac function, brain function, cardiovascular function, the skin. So these were a lot of these conditions. So we did a study at Harvard or at a hospital associated with Harvard to see, is the omega-3 in AFA like exceptionally bioavailable, and that is why we see these benefits. So we discovered that yes, they are actually exceptionally bioavailable, but the amount is so small that at the end of the day, even though they are really bioavailable, just take 2 tablespoons of fish oil and you should see the same benefits. And obviously it was not the same. So we did many studies like this until we stumbled on that stem cell discovery.
Right.
So that was the research process of how we got into all of this. It started with the story of that lady.
And that was just AFA in particular, but we've talked about it before. There's a few other plants that have a similar compound that also causes that release, right?
Yeah, so we started with AFA, and when we have described the whole process of the mechanism of action, the active compounds, how it works in repair, the safety of it, how it does not support tumor growth. When all of this was done, then in the back of my mind, the thought that I had for a number of years was we evolved in symbiosis with the environment. The moment we discovered that stem cells are the repair system of the body and we have a plant that supports stem cell release, it cannot be the only plant. So how do you find the other ones? So you ask the same question, what has been used in the world globally that is known to be associated with a broad variety of health benefits? Goji berry for longevity, foti in Chinese medicine, ginseng, seaweeds, fucoidan from seaweeds. These are things that have been used for centuries and they're known for supporting a broad variety of health benefits. And then going locally in remote areas of the world, like in Madagascar, in Papua New Guinea, in South America, in Africa, where are they using locally, where they don't have access to these global products? And that's when we took these steps that we encountered some fascinating plants like sea buckthornberry from the Tibetan plateau, used there in Tibetan medicine, Mongolian medicine, Chinese medicine for problems of the lung, of the heart, cardiovascular system, problems of the pancreas, and it's used for skin burns and broken bones. So you look at the broad spectrum of benefits. To me, it's telling me it's likely that it's having an effect on stem cells, because you have one benefit, you trigger the release of stem cells, and it manifests itself in various ways in people. So we developed an extract, we tested it in the lab, and we saw that indeed it triggers stem cell release. Another super interesting one was Aloe from Madagascar. So I meet randomly, or by chance, a pharmacist, and she was traveling in the world to look for plants for Parkinson and Alzheimer's. So I asked her, did you come across a plant that the healers were telling you, this plant is good for everything? So at first her reaction was, nothing is good for everything. So I shared with her, no, I'm looking for one biological effect, stem cell release. But that effect would translate in people's experience as many benefits. So she started to think, and she says, interestingly, during her last trip, or at the end of her last trip in Madagascar, her guide and translator driving her to the airport stopped in a small market and scooped like a big bag of these black beads and says, study that. So you tell a scientist, study that, you study it for what? So, it doesn't help you. So it was in her freezer for 5 years. So she sent me a bag of these small beads, and of course we test everything on ourselves. So we started to take these beads, and we saw the strongest response that we have ever seen so far. So we asked, what is it? And it was a unique species of aloe. So there are in Madagascar more than 60-something species of aloe, and that is the only species that is used to develop a remedy in Madagascar called Vahona, that has been used for centuries for back pain, liver problem, digestive problem, diabetes, and interestingly enough, for helping grandpa in the field to continue to work. And interestingly, to help reverse hair color. So as your hair starts to gray, to reverse it to its natural hair color. And interestingly enough, it is one of the, I will say, signature benefit of many of those plants. We have seen that AFA extract does that. We did a study on it and we saw reversal of hair graying. Foti from traditional Chinese medicine has been used historically to reverse hair color. We studied it in the lab and that's what it does. So we discovered Aloe macroclada, Foti. Let's talk about it because Foti is fascinating.
Yeah.
Foti, known as Ishiwu in traditional Chinese medicine. So a friend of mine has a good friend who is a professor in traditional Chinese medicine. But she is a researcher. So what she did is that she's American, but she learned ancient Chinese to be able to go and read ancient Chinese literature that existed before their Renaissance. Just like we had our Renaissance, they had their Renaissance where all the ancient Chinese literature was compiled into one compendium, which is today what is called traditional Chinese medicine. And so the question was, what, if anything, has been lost between ancient Chinese medicine and what we have today in traditional Chinese medicine? And she found one thing, which is called the Jing. The Jing still exists, but in ancient Chinese medicine, there were two Jings. Primordial Jing, which is there on the day of your conception, and postnatal Jing, which is your vital force during your life. And as she's reading my book, Cracking the Stem Cell Code, and she reads all about embryonic stem cells and adult stem cells are being described, she says it's the same description as primordial Jing and postnatal Jing. So we wrote a book together that describes how essentially the description of the Jing in ancient Chinese medicine is the same as stem cells. They had discovered stem cells as being this vital force in the body, way before microscope, way before the idea of a stem cells. So to me, what was interesting is, okay, what are the plants that are known to stimulate the Jing? And let's go and test them in the lab. So it's Foti that is known to stimulate the Jing, and goji berry is known to circulate the Jing. So you take these two together. So we went in the lab and we tested these plants. Foti increases the number of stem cells in circulation, and goji berry stimulates their migration out of the blood into tissues.
They team up. They're partners.
Isn't that fascinating?
That is.
So ancient Chinese medicine had already not only captured the concept, but at plants that tapped into that concept, just like we're doing today, understanding now that the actual physiological counterpart is your stem cells.
It's like the two compounds that are working together. One of them is taking the pendulum or the torch and passing it to the other to walk around with it after they get the fire started. That's
and it's
fascinating.
It's an interesting concept in itself, in the sense that when we did our research, so we study AFA and we started to study other plants. When we looked at goji berry, we see a sharp decline in the number of stem cells in circulation. We had never seen that. And so we're thinking there's a problem with the equipment or the reagents that we're using, the chemical compounds that the antibodies we're using, to count stem cells using flow cytometry, which happens in the lab. I mean, I've been doing research for a long time, and it happens. You start to get bizarre data, and it's okay, something is wrong in the lab, so you clean everything. Is it a mold infection? Whatever. You clean everything, and you redo your study, your experiment. And we did everything, we cleaned everything, changed the region, and we're getting the same results until we realize it was a genuine response, because we start to quantify the density of the receptor that stem cell use to detect the SOS molecule released by an organ in need of repair. And if you increase the number of these receptors, that means the stem cells is more efficient in its ability to migrate out of the blood and migrate into that tissue. That's what that polysaccharide was doing. So, and then we found over time other polysaccharide doing the same thing. And understanding that stem cells, it's a process that is poorly documented in science, because no drug exists so far to stimulate the migration of stem cells out of the blood. So in the absence of a drug, no pharma, nobody has done research on it. But it's so obvious. If your stem cells need to leave the blood to go into the tissue to repair, and we have documentation that we have natural compounds that can do that, then you release stem cells and you want to stimulate their ability to migrate into tissues. So in StemRegen, we have combined the plants that we have that are stem cell mobilizers to stem cell migrators, these plants that trigger stem cell migration. So we have both in StemRegen to stimulate the release of stem cells and then facilitate their migration into tissues.
That's amazing. And so talking a little bit about the routine of how you would incorporate StemRegen into the normal person's lifestyle, what does that look like when people are starting out, or how do they get started with that?
The 2 capsules will trigger the release of, let's say, an average, because everybody is different, anywhere between 5 to 10 million of your own stem cells.
Wow.
So you do this every day. After a month, you have released between 150 to 350 million of your own stem cells. So we easily can see how it can be really significant in your body. It remains the miracle here is our stem cells. So we simply support that natural process in the body.
Right.
So what we have seen over the years, and it is in a way, to be clear, it is how could I say? It is a proposal. We have seen many people getting unbelievable results with just taking 2 capsules a day. But when we do a study, like we're doing Parkinson's study right now, a study on congestive heart failure, it would be ridiculous 6 months later or a year later just to realize maybe we should have given them more. You're wasting an amazing opportunity with a clinic, with a doctors interested to do this project, with patients. So we up the ante by giving more stem cells. It's based also on 20 years of research working with these plants. I'm trying to use what I believe is going to be like the best dose here to test the benefits.
Right.
So we go to 6 capsules, 2 capsules 3 times a day.
Okay.
That's what we do in all of our studies. So having accumulated quite a bit of data with that, then I would say you really want to give it a try and really see what your body can do with more stem cells. Take 2 capsules 3 times a day. You don't have to do this for very long. You will see what your stem cells can do in your life. And then after that, you can basically scale it down to 2 capsules twice or once a day. If there is a significant problem. If there's no problem and we're just talking about just maintaining health, understanding that every problem, age-related problem that develops down the road is the cumulative result of, or the accumulation of daily unrepaired damage. Then you just support the ability of the body to repair these damage every day. Or you do this every 2-3 days and then you just boost that ability in the body. So you take in that way 2 capsules, once a day for maintenance, and then you just adjust, whatever you feel is good for you at any point in time. One place where we see great results is people going for intense workout. And on the day after, you're sore because you have a lot of microscopic lesions in your muscles, ligament, tendons. Well, these will repair with stem cells. So you put more stem cells in circulation and you will see the difference the day after. This is unmissable. You will see the difference. So what we recommend, well, take your daily intake of, let's say, 2 capsules a day, and make sure after your workout, within an hour or 2 of that intense workout, take another 2 capsules. If it is really an intense workout, take 2 more before you go to bed. You'll see the benefit the day after, and you can then include that into your routine of workout.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really cool. So, talking a little bit about Stemrogen and the product and everything, when you discovered that it was 2 capsules every or 3 times a day, did you notice, or did you make that limitation because you noticed there was a plateau effect if you went over that? Or how did you determine like 6 a day?
Over the years, we have seen absolutely, undoubtedly, we only have one study that we have done so far with allomacroclada where we have done this kinds of dose study. But over the years, with every single ingredients we have developed, we have seen a dose-dependent effect. A typical story that we see is somebody taking 2 capsules for a year or 2 and then hearing about somebody who has taken 2 capsules 3 times a day and the kind of result that they have seen, and then the person says, oh, let me give it a try. And then they try to increase their amount, their intake for a short amount of time, and now they come back with a whole other series of benefits. So we have seen over and over that taking more gives you better results.
Right.
But there's a point, but we have no data to tell you where does it plateau.
Okay.
I have taken 18 capsules a day for years, but I'm traveling. I have 2.5 million air miles. I've been subjected to like jet lag. I mean, constantly traveling like across the globe. So, and I'm looking back and I'm thinking, I've gone through those 15, 20 years of traveling, like more than 200 days a year outside of the country.
Oh my goodness.
And I have not developed any, I cannot tell like there's an impact of that traveling. Is it because I was doing this? I cannot tell. But I have definitely not experienced anything negative out of taking a high amount. So there's no problem taking more. But I would say it's a sense. I would say more than 2 capsules 3 times a day, maybe you're just wasting your money. Maybe. Or there's a cost, to that amount of product every day. So I would say it's probably a cost. I'm trying to establish what I know that is going to be the most effective or effective enough while keeping it in the budget that people can afford.
That makes sense.
That's probably how it was determined. And it is what we're doing in studies.
Gotcha.
You can take more. Many people take more.
That's a good answer. Okay, so talking a little bit more, shifting our focus to a little bit more of the business side of it, how do people find out more about you? Can you let the people know, and what the general packages that people start out with when they're interested in starting this type of regimen?
Yeah, well, we have 1 bottle, we have a 3-pack, we have a 6-pack, we have a subscription that gives essentially $15 discount. We have an affiliate program that was developed understanding that this is not a cheap product. When I say it's not a cheap product, there's tons of research behind these ingredients. They are discovered one at a time. They're not taken into a catalog where we just pick up an ingredient and just use it. We travel to these farms. We develop these extract with these farms and the product harvested in these farms specifically. This is the ingredients on which we have done the human double-blind crossover studies. This is the work that has been done with all these ingredients, and there's a cost to it. So the product is not cheap, but I know with everything that I have seen, I know this product can change the face of the earth in terms of health and wellness. So it becomes important to give access to everybody. So we developed a system where every time you refer somebody, you make 20%. So you basically find 5 people who consume the product and your product is free. So we wanted to give universal access to everybody. So these are the various ways with which the product is available. I would suggest starting with 3 bottles, 2 capsules 3 times a day. It's the best way because you can then experience what can be a significant boost in your ability to repair. And then after that, you can scale down. If you say, I can only take 2 capsules a day, we have had a lot of the cases that we publish that are retrospective analysis, meaning the person comes after a year of taking the product, 6 months of taking the product, tells us his or her story. If we can have access to the medical records and we can speak with the doctor, we can have a clear determination in the medical record when Stemrigen started to be taken. When we have all of this and we have enough data to be able to go peer review, then we publish these cases. In many of these cases, people have just followed the label. They took 2 capsules a day. So I can tell you, many people get results at 2 capsules a day. I just know that if you want to make sure that you will get the full benefit, well, just jumpstart at the beginning and then scale down. That's probably the best way to start.
That's a great answer. Okay, so go with 3 or go with 2. Okay,
2 capsules 3 times a day or twice a day.
Right.
Do whatever feels good to you.
Right.
Following this concept that obviously triggering 3 waves of stem cells in your body will be more and better than just 1. And then see what happens in your life.
Awesome. Well, you're a very inspiring man, Christian. It's always a pleasure. Let
Thank
the
you
people
so
know
much.
Where they can find out more. Stemrigen.com, I assume.
Caliagen, which is the
Caliagen.
company. So Kalyagen. Calia means youth, gen, generation. So Caliagen.com. And I put a lot of answers to questions at Stem Cell Christian on TikTok, on Instagram. So
Nice.
There's a lot of material there as well.
Great. Well, we're very excited to keep learning more from such an inspiring person. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, everyone.